Hey guys, it's Marshall Mathers the fourth here, back to you today with another video. And in today's video, this will be a video today about the fact that I really wish and do believe that Eminem should have released his canceled, unreleased Relapse 2 album on November 13 in the year 2008 when he would have been 36 years old. And if he would have done that, which he definitely should have, that would have been very considerate and generous of him to have done to all of his fans and especially stans. And, you know, if he wasn't going to give us a Relapse album trilogy, the very least that he could have done and should have done would have been to have released 2 Relapse albums. His first one on January 1, 2008, at the age of 35 years old, which is exactly when he should have released his first Relapse album, and not when he actually did, which was on May 19 of 2009 at the age of 36, which was fucking bullshit. And also, and definitely, have released his canceled, unreleased Relapse 2 album on exactly November 13 in the year 2008 at the age of 36 years old. And I am fucking pissed off that Eminem didn't release his unreleased, canceled, unfortunately canceled, rap album Relapse 2. I mean, either way, I'm furious that he didn't release at least 2 Relapse albums, if not have released an entire Relapse album trilogy or complete a Relapse album trilogy with 3 Relapse albums, because honestly, I don't think 3 Relapse albums could have even worked, because when he was working on even his first Relapse album and second Relapse album, Relapse 2, which was tragically canceled and unreleased, he was washing out the drugs in his system using pills. After getting his stomach pumped or whatever he got pumped when he had his overdose and went to the hospital in like December of 07 or something like that, he got his like lungs or stomach or something like that pumped because he had the drug overdose in December of 07 when he was 35 years old. And when he started working on his first Relapse album, he was washing out the drugs using pills. So during the time that he was working on his Relapse album, like his first one and maybe or perhaps his second one, he was flushing out his like stomach or whatever using pills. After recovering from his drug overdose in the hospital, he was just flushing them out with pills. And, you know, he said on his 2017 Revival album, Encore, I was on drugs. Relapse, I was flushing them out. Flushing them out as in using pills. And so by the time he released his Recovery album in 2010, when he was 37 years old, he wasn't even on pills anymore by that time. By age 37 in 2010, he wasn't even on pills anymore. Or even by the time he started working on his Recovery album, which was in like mid to late 2009, and then released it in 2010 when he was 37. But, you know, he would have probably had his drug overdose earlier. He probably still would have had it exactly the same, like the exact same way it happened, but it would have probably happened earlier, because if he had released his Encore album a whole year earlier than when he actually did release it, which was on November 12 of 2004 at the age of 32 years old, even though originally he was going to release it on November 16 of 2004. And if he had released that album of his when I would have wanted him to, and when I would have much rather preferred Eminem to have released his encore album, being on July 8 in the year 2003 at the age of 30. His best friend Big Proof would have probably been killed in 2005 instead of 2006. And instead of Eminem having his overdose in late 2007 when he was like 34 or 35, he would have probably instead have had it in late 2006 at the age of 33, 34 years old. And so that by the time he would have started working on his first Relapse album, he would have been working on it and like recording that first Relapse album of his during 2007, during the age 34, or during the time he would have been 34 years old. And then I would have loved it more than anything if he had released a Relapse 2 album and obviously started recording it after releasing his first Relapse album that he really should have released on January 1, 2008 at the age of 35 and no fucking later than then, and release a second Relapse album, Relapse 2, on November 13 in the year 2008 at the age of 36 years old. And after releasing his Relapse 2 album, I think it would have also been really awesome and amazing if he would have topped off his Relapse 2 album by also including Relapse 2 Refill. Like, before he released his Recovery album in 2010, he released an album titled Relapse Refill, which was obviously originally going to be Relapse 2. And Relapse Refill was just almost in a way like a really big deluxe edition or really expanded edition of Eminem's Relapse album. And a lot of the songs that you hear on Eminem's Relapse Refill album were songs that were going to be released on his canceled unreleased Relapse 2 album. But he didn't obviously release his entire Relapse 2 album. There's still a lot of songs that are from his Relapse 2 album that he never released. Some of them were leaked online, though. Some of them are. Like, his song Cocaine was supposed to be on Relapse 2. A recent song that recently got bought year-wise, like in 2019, by a bunch of people on Reddit, is a song called Nut Up, but they had to pay a lot of fucking money to even get it from the leaker, and it's a dope song, and it was also a song that was supposed to be on Relapse 2, and there's another song that was supposed to be on Relapse 2 titled Oh No, which is another Relapse 2 song that's been leaked a long time ago on YouTube and elsewhere on the internet. And there's also a song called Things Get Worse, which featured the rapper B.O.B., but Eminem had a solo version, which recently got leaked to the internet also in like 2020 or 2019 or something like that. And, you know, so I would say, like, Eminem should have, at the very least, at the very minimum, released his Relapse 2 album on November 13 in the year 2008 at the age of 36 years old. And then any of the songs that didn't get to make it on Relapse 2 have released a Relapse 2 Refill album, which would have been really epic, dope, and out of this world, and just very considerate and generous of him to have done. And, you know, I'm honestly heartbroken and crushed that either way that he never released Relapse 2, because his Relapse album is one of my all-time favorite albums of his. I mean, honestly, even more than his Slim Shady LP album, if I'm going to be completely honest here, because, you know, his Relapse album not only has a deluxe edition, so therefore more songs than even his Slim Shady LP album did, but also he has a Relapse Refill album, which is even more Relapse songs, or songs that were supposed to be on Relapse 2, and only some of the songs. And the only reason why Eminem even made a Relapse Refill album is because, of course, he decided to tragically and unfortunately cancel his Relapse 2 album because of backlash, because of bitch ass fans and critics. And the songs that he did release on Relapse Refill worked because in the songs that made the Relapse Refill album of his, he didn't mention anything about a Relapse sequel in any of the songs that are on Relapse Refill. So they almost seem or sound like songs that could have just been like throwaway Relapse songs from his first Relapse album, or just like unreleased Relapse album songs, but they're not. All the songs that are on his Relapse Refill album were just some of the many, like a handful or a bunch of the songs that were supposed to originally be on his Relapse 2 album if he would have still have released the album, which he definitely should have. And, you know, I love the very dark horrorcore Relapse album by Eminem. I mean, I cannot get enough of that album of his. I mean, honestly, when it comes to like any rapper in the rap entertainment industry, music industry, that's probably the closest album that any rapper of either gender will ever make and release. That will be the closest thing to like incel rap music. I mean, honestly, when you listen to both Eminem's Relapse and Relapse Refill albums, it really does sound and seem and feel like an album, a rap album, that an incel rapper would make. And it's funny because Eminem's not an incel. He's not. He's obviously a man whore, but the stuff he raps about on his Relapse album, the super dark, twisted, really disturbing songs that he makes and has on his Relapse and Relapse Refill albums, really do sound like songs that an incel rapper would make, which is kind of hilarious to think about. And that's why I love that album of his so much. And of course, Relapse Refill. And I'm just super heartbroken and crushed that he didn't release Relapse 2, because honestly, I love his Relapse album more than I do his Recovery album. I love his Recovery album, and it's a great rap album. It's an amazing album and whatnot, but I prefer Relapse way more and over than his Recovery album. And, you know, it's funny because I'm not even the only one who does. Even when it comes to the famous rapper Tyler, the Creator, who I'm also a pretty big fan of, he really preferred Eminem's Relapse album over his Recovery album. And, you know, I can't say I blame him. Honestly, I can't say I blame him there. I actually fully 100% agree with him all the way on that fact that his Relapse album was definitely much better than his Recovery album. And Tyler, the Creator, wished that Eminem would have released his Relapse 2 album. And, you know, it's also sad because his Relapse album is very underrated. I mean, it's extremely underrated. More underrated than Encore, more underrated than his previous 3 albums like Slim Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP, Eminem Show, Recovery, MMLP2. I mean, actually, MMLP2 is pretty underrated, and so is Revival. But his Relapse album is just one of his most underrated rap albums that he's ever made and released. And part of the reason that is because he dissed his own Relapse album on his song Not Afraid from his Recovery album in 2010. And, you know, because of the amount of backlash and criticism that his first Relapse album received, that is the reason why Eminem chose to not release his Relapse 2 album, even though he already made his Relapse 2 album. I mean, he completely finished his Relapse 2 album all the way, 100%. but because of the amount and level of backlash and criticism that he received both from his fans after taking a 4-year hiatus and break from making and releasing rap albums, and also critics, he felt so bad to the point that he decided to completely scrap Relapse 2, not release it, and just obviously keep it rotting away in his studio, and instead make an entirely new album, being Recovery, which he released in 2010 at the age of 37. And, you know, obviously I still would have wanted Eminem to release Recovery, but I wish he would have released at least and at the very minimum 2 Relapse albums, as well as like first Relapse as well as the deluxe edition, Relapse 2, and then Relapse 2 Refill to go with Relapse 2, just simply being the songs that would have been scrapped, left over, or unreleased, or not have been able to have been made on his Relapse 2 album, released on a Relapse 2 Refill album, and then have released Recovery. Still in 2010, but early 2010. And after I do this video tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a video about when I wish and do believe that his Recovery album should have came out, and both the, not the year or day, but just the month would be the only thing that I would have changed or made different about his Recovery album, as well as 3 of the songs that are on his Recovery album are Relapse 2 throwaway leftover songs. And obviously, if he would have released his Relapse 2 album, then those 3 songs that are on his Recovery album that were left over and scrapped from his Relapse 2 album would not have been on his Recovery album. But I'll talk more about that in his Recovery album video that I'm going to do tomorrow, about when his Recovery album should have been released. But this video is all about his Relapse 2 album, his unreleased, tragically and unfortunately canceled Relapse 2 album. But yeah, I would have been so happy and so grateful if Eminem would have released Relapse 2 on exactly and specifically November 13, 2008 at the age of 36, and then also released Relapse 2 Refill, just including any of the songs that would have been unreleased, leftover, scrapped Relapse 2 album, Relapse 2 songs that would not have made the Relapse 2 album, like the standard or even deluxe edition of the Relapse 2 album, and then just released those scrapped, leftover, unreleased Relapse 2 songs that didn't make either the standard or deluxe edition of Relapse 2, and release them on a Relapse 2 Refill album, released on the same exact day, which would have been awesome. Or just, instead of releasing a Relapse 2 deluxe edition, just release Relapse 2 on November 13, 2008 at the age of 36, and Relapse 2 Refill on the same exact day, same month, and same year, to have been like the deluxe edition of his Relapse 2 album. And that's only if he would have been able to release his first Relapse album on January 1 of 2008 at the age of 35. And you know what? That totally could have happened, but only if he would have released his Encore album instead of on November 12 of 2004 at the age of 32, like he actually did, but instead released it on July 8, 2003 at the age of just 30 years old, so he would have been 2 whole years younger, and that Encore album of his would have been a year older, and so it would have been more older and therefore more classic, which would have been better. Eminem would have been 2 whole years younger, which definitely also would have been greater, and that album of his would have been more classic, as well as his Relapse album, and hopefully his Relapse 2 album. And, you know, I think it would have been more likely for Eminem to have released his Relapse 2 album in like the same year, obviously, that he released his Relapse album, if he released his first Relapse album on January 1, 2008 at the age of 35 years old, and then Relapse 2 as well as Relapse 2 Refill on November 13, 2008 at the age of 36, and then in early 2010 released Recovery. And in 2009, obviously I've not released anything because he would have already released 2 albums in the same year. So if his Relapse album had came out in early 2008, at the very beginning of 2008, I feel like he would have been more likely to have released Relapse 2 then in 2008, in late 2008, if that would have been the case and had actually happened. And then he could have released Recovery in 2010, in early 2010, instead of mid 2010. But that's all I wanted to say in today's video. Let me know what you all think in the comment section down below. I'm out.